Thank you. Gosh, I've never held a microphone in my hand before. I'm overdue. My name is Lynn, and I'm an animal lover. And I want to thank all of you for coming. What could be nicer? I mean, look at the weather, the surroundings, the company. For those of you who may not know, this event was organized by a group called RAAW, R-A-A-W. You may not have heard about RAAW before today, so let me tell you just a little bit about it. Then we're going to listen to the blessing. We were a small group of animal lovers who came together after an incident last May. We had one thing in common. We wanted to work towards changing animal welfare as we know it now. Originally, we didn't even have a name. Things progressed and we received a little attention, and the press kept asking what organization we represented. It seemed pretty clear that we needed to have a name if we were going to be recognized as a voice for animal advocacy. So RAAW was born. Reform Advocates for Animal Welfare. In a nutshell, it describes who we are and what our mandate is. The name, however, was not an easy choice, let me tell you. Do you have any idea how challenging it is to pick out a name which summed up our beliefs, described our mission, and at the same time wasn't too long and could be remembered? Not as easy as you might think. Many of the animal groups like to use an acronym. So we launched a search and tried to find an acronym with appropriate descriptive words, which would also be a clever acronym. It has to be clever. Unfortunately, it appeared all the good acronyms were already taken. There is absolutely no shortage of clever acronyms. You have the Responsible Animal Care Committee, TRACS, TRACS. I kind of liked Animal Rights Collective, collective spelled with a K, cute, A-R-K, ARC. We have People for Animal Welfare and Safety, PAWS, PAWS. So it seemed we were limited since all the letters to make up a really clever acronym were already being used. We considered Ontario Animal Rights, OAR, or boring, not clever enough. We thought of Canadian Reform for Animal Welfare, CRAW, CRAW, didn't sound very nice. We finally hit the right choice because it seemed to describe our mission perfectly. It was the Canadian Reformers for Animal Protection, CRAP. You can see that didn't quite describe what we wanted to get across. So RAAW was the choice decided on, Reform Advocates for Animal Welfare. I want you to remember that name because you're going to be hearing a lot about it in the future. We advocate for the reform of welfare for animals. It's not an exclusive club. Members of RAAW don't even pay membership fees. And as a matter of fact, most of you are already members. You don't remember joining, but you did. Every one of you who has adopted a pet from a shelter advocated for that animal's welfare. Every one of you who's ever volunteered at an animal rescue advocated for animal welfare. Every one of you who's made a donation to an animal group advocated for the welfare of those animals. And every one of you who's chosen to share your life with a companion animal advocated for that animal's welfare. Every member of RAAW has accepted responsibility for the welfare of an animal one way or another. It's a nice group to be a member of. However, to remain a member, you have to do more. I wanted to get through this memorial without mentioning OSPCA by name. Unfortunately, if I want to get our message across, I can't do that. They are what brought us together. In May this year, the OSPCA in Newmarket planned on killing 350 healthy animals in their care. I'm not going to belabor how horrendous that was because it's really just too upsetting. There are a number of OSPCA volunteers here today who were present during that period. That period when they started to see body bags lined up in hallways for days before the plan was exposed. Thank God for the volunteer who made that call to the press. And thank God the press who covered the story. Because as a result, the public outcry could stop them. But not before 102 healthy animals had already been killed. And not before many of those volunteers' lives were changed as a result of their experience. They too are victims and were affected emotionally in many ways. Some of them will never be able to volunteer in a shelter again. One young volunteer had a nervous breakdown. 5 months later, many of them still cry because of what they witnessed and at the mention of the Newmarket shelter. How could this have happened? What possible sense does any of it make? Sadly, what happened is only the tip of the iceberg. Exposure of what OSPC did alerted us to what's happening in our own backyard. Most of us were unaware of it, and like many RAAW members, I know I was. That horrific state of affairs is not exclusive to Newmarket, and until changes are made at the three governmental levels, horrors like what happened in May will go on, and the ripple effect will follow, and we will continue to have discarded animals and traumatized volunteers. With your support in November, we can take the first step toward improvement in the way our animals are treated and viewed. In June, Newmarket MPP Frank Cleese tabled a resolution calling for changes in the OSPCA Act and the way government handles the issue of animal welfare in shelters in Ontario. Many of us here today spent our summer getting signatures on petitions to support that resolution. On November 18, that resolution will be voted on in the legislature at the Parliament of Ontario at Queen's Park. As a member of RAAW, the first thing you can do to help bring about change